I want to be succinct to the point and not ramble. I will, in an interview, literally look at my watch very obviously when they're rambling. If they're just going on, I'll look at my watch and I will tell you how common it is that those social cues aren't picked up.
The From Busy to Rich podcast helps financial advisors by providing strategies and insights that will not only change your life, but practice.
Well, hello, friends, and thank you for joining us today on From Busy to Rich podcast. We're joined by a special guest that if you've been following us for a while, you may recognize. But before we reintroduce him, Wes, it's great to see you and talk a little bit about where we're going today.
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, man, I am always excited on really any topic that I get to be with my really good friend Mike Scovel. Those of you who've listened for a while, he is the most popular reoccurring guest we have that comes on here. You've been on the podcast more than anyone else, and generally for two reasons. One is because you're up to something and about everything in your life that you do, and you and I have solved so many of the world's problems, sometimes late at night. If we had somebody recording them, they would have been solved. We didn't remember it all, but we've also just have some things that when life shows up and you're like, you know what, that is a problem, but it also could be an opportunity. And you're one of the best people I know to talk about stuff like that. And I also pretty pretty regularly, like, just trick you into a meeting that I tell you is a podcast recording, actually. So, I got all those things going for you, and I'm gonna tee up what we're gonna talk about today, but brother Mike, thanks for being on the show again and always giving of your energy to this.
Yeah, well, I love it, man. Yeah, exactly. That was it, right? This came apart, upon us as a conversation. Let's have a conversation, which then turned into a podcast. To which I said, "Hey, I'm in a T-shirt,"
Yeah.
and unbelievably, so was Wes. So I felt a lot better coming in and
Yeah,
being
yeah.
part of that.
This was
Yes.
what I planned to wear, and I knew about it weeks in advance. So,
I love it. And I
you
love
know
that you feel like we've solved the world problems. At least we have solved them in the way we see the solve of
that's
that problem, right?
exactly
That is
right.
for sure.
Which is only our way is the
Yeah.
best way. That's a really healthy way to think.
Yeah, I love that.
So
Love
no,
that.
so here's what we're gonna talk about, guys. Um, so we have and I have you know, 2 kids in college right now, and Gage is gonna be graduating this year and with a business finance degree from TCU. He's had friends that have graduated a year or 2 years ahead of him. And Mike, Braden graduated, and he's in now. We'll talk about later where what his path has been so far, but um, here is something I've observed, and because you get out of college, right, and if you want to go do you want to do stuff, right? If you're wired that way, I want to work, I want to get better, I want to create a good life for me and my family, do work that is meaningful and valuable, and you graduate college with a degree and start looking for jobs, or hopefully your last year you're looking for jobs or entry points, whatever your path is, or to start whatever you think you're going to start. But if you're doing that and you're going to employers for a job, whatever's available with what you have so far, you have something that is common. You have a degree, so do thousands and thousands of other people in the world that are going to be applying for those roles, depending on what it is. And not a lot else in a lot of cases, right? Not something where they just are like, you were an NFL team and we go draft that running back who's gonna be an instant impact player. This is like in many cases, a 3rd or 4th stream backup quarterback that if things go well, maybe we develop them to a place of excellence. But what 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 I wanna talk about is really today, in a focus of our discussion is not like, well, okay, definitely maybe what jobs do we try and pick that we think would be useful, that we can add some value, but we can also grow and develop. But really, man, how do you even get it? Like, what are some things we can do? And I think one real practical thing, and I think there's things before this that we'll get into, is like, man, what does a good interview look like? And maybe what's a bad one? Because Mike, you have interviewed more people than any person I know on the planet and at a very, very high level and at all shapes, sizes, kinds. So you have so much insight on this stuff. So I want to start there. And so anything you want to add to that, Justin or Mike, before
Yeah.
we dive into that?
Let me throw something out before Justin might want to throw something out. Here's what I would say. And as you're popping into this podcast, you might be like, "Well, what am I here to listen to a podcast about a kid getting an interview job? The right interview for the right job." I would tell you, interestingly enough, as I got to reflect on this here in the last 20 minutes, there are so many similarities between a great interview for a career and a great interview with a client. Like I think a lot of the mistakes and the steps that you can step into, good or bad, happen in both environments, and very similar issues. I think things that you could do that go badly in a job interview might show up also in an interview with a client. And so I think
Absolutely.
that as you listen to this, and if there, what I would tell you is I think you'll find some value in the symmetry there, right? They are aligned, and if you can do a great job interview, you can do a great client interview.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And Mike, listen, because we teach transform our listener base. Many of them been through it. And here's one of the number one things that they know will grow their practice that they need help with is they also need really good people on their team that they're looking for actively. And it's like, how do you find and they're not doing as many interviews as you've done in your life. They're doing 2 a year, maybe every other year or every 5 years, and so they're not great at it, right? So this is gonna be very, very helpful, both sides. Justin, anything that you wanna add there?
I would just say I would take it one step further. For those of you who, whether you're listening or you're watching on YouTube, like the application doesn't stop just from a business standpoint. It's really getting down to the nitty gritty of like how are you showing up, period, like in life in
Come
different
on,
areas of your
yeah.
life. If you're going on a date, that's an interview, whether you recognize it or not. And how you show up is going to have an impact on how things finish. So, and it's kind of like being the one who wrapped the Christmas present. I get the benefit of already kind of knowing where we're going, so I'm excited to get into it, and I don't want to give too much away. So,
Awesome. All right,
love it.
Mike, let's just start, you just start talking about good interview, bad interview from both sides of the table. Talk
Yeah.
to me.
Well, again, this where some of them are common sense things, and I think that again relate to both. I would tell you, it's amazing to me. We purposely try to in the front end of any interview get a sense of how much they know about us before we go anywhere. And I would tell you how incredibly common it is for them to have done very little research entering an interview. I would say that would be huge on the client side too, right? How much can you learn about them in advance of that meeting? So when you're walking in, you got some understanding. What maybe it's some research on their business, maybe it's some research on their family if it's a well known family. Just some starting points where you say these are the things I've noticed. The industry that you're in, I've seen this or whatever. Just some advanced kind of cool info. When you're interviewing for a job, right? I'm going to ask them I represent a large mutual insurance company. I'm gonna say, what do you know about us? What did you read about us? What did you see about us? And if they have some content, I'm gonna be like, great. One of the things I really don't do in interviews is I don't affirm. It's just part of our process. I'm not an affirmer, right? So I would assume you would have looked it up. So I'm not gonna be like, well, congratulations, way to go, right? That you actually did some research. But if they didn't do research, I'm certainly gonna address it, right? If they hadn't done their talk, generally we're gonna have a conversation like man, I'm just gonna give you a little advice. The next interview you go with, whoever that might be, you're gonna wanna walk in and be able to have a conversation about this without them having to tell you everything about the company. Like, you're gonna wanna try to put yourself in a better position than you are currently. And I wanna see how they react to that too,
Yeah.
right?
No, so let me just ask a question on that. So when and this has happened frequently, I'm assuming.
Of
And
course.
and you say that. Let
Oh,
to
yeah.
that. When you do, when has the response gone poorly? When has it gone well?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a hard to one, they're in a bad position, right? So they're in a space that it's like they've been knocked back already, and this is the
Yeah.
first, like, 4 minutes of the interview, maybe 5.
Yeah.
And so, I want to see if they can think on their feet. And sometimes it's a misunderstanding. We'll interview people sometimes where they come in from an agent reference, right? Maybe an advisor says, you got to talk to Mike. I love what I do. I think you would love it. And so when they get in, they're like, man, I apologize. I apologize. I was just thinking this was a conversation. I should have done my research. That was on me. I think I misunderstood. So if they can get creative enough to figure out a good excuse, they might be quick enough on their feet to do well in this business. Okay.
Yeah.
If they blame, if they then they it can go poorly. I want to hear. I appreciate that. I want to hear. I'm hearing you. I'm taking it in. What that's
Yeah.
telling me is they're probably coachable, right? Like
Yeah.
you're right. Absolutely. Should have done that. Wasn't thinking on me. Anything in that range is going to be probably, we're going to be able to move past that with no issue. And if they answer it poorly, I would say most people would do that. Most would if they're at all right for this business. And so,
Yeah.
usually they can save themselves.
Well, man, one, that's gold right there. Just what we covered so far, and I know we're just barely getting into it. Because here's the other thing I see in that, and definitely I'm gonna adapt and be using this, but is the like stuff is going to happen in any job that you didn't expect, that you don't like, that you're embarrassed by. It just will. I mean, we're human, and that is going to happen. And so it's not that it's not gonna happen, it's how am I going to respond to it? What is is it my default to get angry or defensive, or to listen with the intent to understand and then go, "Oh, yeah, no, you know what? You're right. Man, I," but to be able to pivot like that, so I love that one. So that's genius, so let's keep going.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would tell you, something else they see a lot. Or did you have something, Justin? I don't want
Yeah,
to.
I was
Go
just
for it.
gonna say, as you're talking, going back to the point that a lot of our viewers and listeners are advisors and talking about clients, the expectation should be that you're being researched before someone has a conversation. Like, so it's worth, where we work or the company that we're associated with, if you go online, there's plenty of great things that you can find about them. Like it's worthwhile going and seeing. I've even been evaluating my head. I'm like, if somebody goes and looks me up right now, what does all that say? Right? Like, what are you
Yeah,
gonna go find? How's that looking? And how's that present to a client? And is that up to date with just the way things have integrated with technology and everything else? So I think it's just a great point of knowing it both ways. Like, not just did they do their research, but are you presenting yourself and making sure you're doing it in a way to where when somebody looks you up, that you're going to attract those people, not push them away.
It's interesting. You could take that Ben Duffy approach, which is a very very old school kind of methodology. You probably don't even know the name anymore. Most people on this listening probably don't know who Ben Duffy was, but I would look him up. Um, it was in essence a person who went into a very very big sales opportunity, the largest advertising sale in the history. It was I forget the big cigarette company he was trying to get the ad campaign for. He was the assistant to the main salesperson. The main salesperson got sick the night before. And so they had traveled to go see this company. The main salesperson got sick. He was in charge of actually taking over because they had no other alternative. It was Philip Morris. And so they were going, he had a big meeting in the morning. He wasn't supposed to be the lead. And so, what do you do when you are have a massive, massive interview the next day? You aren't supposed to be the one leading it, and the biggest sale in history is on the line. What would you do the night before? Well, he did what everybody would probably do, and he went to the bar. Right? He went straight to the bar. Now, interestingly enough, he went to the bar and sat at that bar, had a cocktail, and the bartender asked him some questions, and he said, "Man, I've got this pitch tomorrow, and I'm very uncomfortable with it." And the bartender literally said, "Well, man, if I were you, and since you aren't nearly as prepared as maybe you would have been if you were leading it, I'd go into it with asking, with telling them the things I would think they'd want to know about. Like I'd go in there and say, man, if I were you." These would be things that I'd have questions about your company, what you can deliver, and I'd have questions about this, and I'd probably want to know this about the campaign, and I'd probably want to know this. And the bartender said, if you could lead with some things that you believe would be on their mind, most likely those are things on their mind. Number one, number two. Those might be the only questions you get all night because at the end of that conversation, at the end of you saying, these are the things that I think you probably really want to know about me, that client's going to say, yeah, that's it. I do want to know that. Well, you already know the answers because you've supplanted the questions in their mind, right? So that's the Ben Duffy thing. The knowing what your client, what your interviewer is curious about you, and you could probably supplant that in their mind and maybe take over the interview a little bit. Now that's crazy right there. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Man, it's so much in that too is so the fact that he gave himself to that opportunity. Because I think another big thing with people is they feel like, well, if I'm not completely prepared, if I've not and an opportunity's there, whether it's a question that pops up or like this situation, the other sales guy gets sick. I love the Les Brown story. I don't know if you remember that one, but where Les Brown, he wanted to be a DJ, but they're like, look, you're never gonna be a DJ, but he worked nights cleaning up after a DJ that drank a whole lot. And this DJ kept getting drunker and on the air. Finally, they called up, said, he's off. Somebody has to fill the air, but he was ready, and he stepped into that opportunity and did the best and ended up getting the job. But the other thing is, look, stuff is going to happen you don't expect. Stuff is not going to go according to plan. How are you going to respond to it? Lean in. Don't get scared. Don't like capitulate. Just have a reasonable way forward. Be as prepared as you can. But yeah, no, I love it.
You said something else too, so I'm gonna pivot to another thing you said, man. Whether it's dating or whether it's everything in life is an interview, right? That you're going through, and I would tell you, a good date isn't one that you go on and you talk all the time, and a good date isn't one that you don't say a word. That's not a good date, right? A good
Yeah.
date would be, and I wouldn't know because I haven't been on it. I got married at 19, started dating her when I was just turned 17. So I haven't been on a date outside of the woman I've married for a very long time. But
Yeah,
what I would say is, it's not a good date in my mind without the both of you sharing, right? But without this being equal.
Sure.
I would tell you, same is true with an interview. I look very much. This is something huge. I think people in our business struggle a lot when they don't have a lot of self awareness. And where that pops up is where people will just continually talk. You'll ask them a question. Tell me about something, and they will go on and on and on. Like, I would tell you, if I'm going into an interview with a client, I'm going into an interview with a company to get a job, I'm going to be as succinct as possible. The more words you use, the less command you have of the information. The more succinct you are with your words, the more command you have of the information. So I want to be succinct to the point and not ramble. I will, in an interview, literally look at my watch very obviously when they're rambling. If they're just going on, I'll look at my watch and I will tell you how common it is that those social cues aren't picked up. They're not
Wow.
picking it up. I mean, I might even yawn, like just like a fake yawn it, right? Like, my God. And they don't pick up on it.
Yeah.
It's an issue of saying I want to be very, very concise with the information. I don't need to over flower it up. And so I would tell you that is a big miss from interviewers. A lot of people who cannot be concise in an interview end up being non-concise in their selling career, and they end up being the ones that talk 98% of the time. Client gets very little in, and it's a one-sided conversation.
Well, it's I love the Ben Feldman quote, "When we come in this business, we're in a state of starry-eyed enthusiasm, then we educate ourselves to a place of sophisticated confusion." And I find people overcomplicate something that could be done in so fewer words
Yeah,
and so many times. And that's also a good cue for me of why so many times when we're talking, you look at your watch and yawn. So I'll try and pick that up more,
yeah,
Mike.
yeah, yeah. I've tried it. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. Doesn't work, Wes. I'm just gonna tell you. No, I would say that is a monster. Self awareness and social cues are something you want to be going in an interview with that at top of mind. I'll ask questions specifically with time limits. Hey, in 2 minutes or less, tell me something about you that's not in your resume that's going to help me remember you because I'm interviewing 17 other people for this position. I need to know. I got to be able to remember you in 2 weeks. What should I know about you? And and again, that's a 2 minute mark. I will watch my clock. If they're going past
Yeah.
2 minutes, it's noted. And I'd even had that conversation with people like to say, listen, we went 3.5 minutes. Has anybody ever told you that, man, you can go? And when you get going on talking, you just go? And I looked at my watch twice and you didn't notice. Has anybody ever brought that to your attention? I'll do that in an interview.
Wow.
And it's just, you know what it's about? Because at this point in my life, I'm not here to offend. I'm not here to make wrong. what I would desire is this person gets somebody coaching them. And
Yeah.
it might not be a right fit for us, so I'm okay with that. And I'm gonna tell you, listen, this is what I did. I asked you this question. We went way past it. And in the future, whenever you're interviewing, man, this is what I would probably do. And that one's interesting because I'll get a lot of people who know they speak too long, they go too long, and they'll be like, "Yeah, thank you." I've had so many people appreciate the feedback there, unbelievably. And so, be watchful if you're in a client situation where you're finding yourself talking too much and not watching them enough for feedback.
So I love this specific thing because it hits a couple of just one in my mind buttons. So if you're the one interviewing and that happens to you, right? That thing comes up and Mike is we'll call him Mean Mike for a second. Mike's across the Mean Mike's across the table. And he's and you said like you went 3.5 minutes. Has anyone ever told you that like you when you start going, you really, really go and you kind of become unaware of
Yeah,
what we had said is important as far as the structure and timing. Again, you've got an opportunity there to respond, and clearly it's embarrassing, and it is like, "Oh, man, so he doesn't like me." There's all these things. Or if how you answer back is incredibly important. It's like, "No, man, I wasn't paying I don't I'm so sorry about that. What what are some things I can do about that? Because 'Cause you're right. People do tell me that stuff all the time, and I don't want it that. That's a person who then you go, "They're coachable." Wow,
yeah,
these people listen to feedback and they're not defending, they're not deflecting, and so very powerful. The other thing, Mike, and I want to hear this in the spirit, because Mike is not Mean Mike. If you knew him like I know him, you certainly would know that. But I love this in Matthew McConaughey's most recent book. He has a chapter in Poets and Prayers, is what it's called, and because it's kind of what you're reflecting here when you are being with these questions very specific and then coming back at them with very candid feedback on it is there's a big difference between being a nice guy and a good man. And a nice guy, they would never say anything. Never. They wouldn't. In that they'd be like, oh, okay. Now they're not hiring you and they're not helping you. They're not giving you anything you can actually do anything with. A good man isn't a jerk. I mean, they can be, but isn't a jerk. But it's more of a let's be honest to where I can, if they're going to take the help, this is the help. But I'm certainly not hiring them if we don't address it and I don't, and they don't know about it. I mean, that gets worse. So I think understand what do you stand for? I mean, do you want them to like you as the interviewer, or do you want them to be the best they can and you're providing them in that interview immediate feedback into ways to make it better and they're either going to latch onto it or not.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to From Busy to Rich. If you're listening and something sparks a question or you just want to explore these ideas further, visit us at wesyounglive.com or email us at info@wesyounglive.com. You'll find free resources, tools, and ways to get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.
I'm gonna give you some advice, and you just said, you can be a kind or good or however how
Yep.
Matthew said it, right? And
Yep.
the key here is clients aren't going to tell you when you're long winded. They're just gonna just shoot. They just get tired. They just get
Yeah.
tired, right, and they just shut down, and you ultimately don't end up with them as a client. Now you don't know why, and there's very few clients who'd be like, I got to tell you, we came in this interview, and boy, did you just ramble. You just ramble. They're not going to do that. What I would, this is a highly requested action. I would say if you're out interviewing clientele all the time, I would record yourself. I'd bring it in, just put a recording, and then see how you're responding. How long winded you are. Are you boring yourself? Okay,
Yeah.
because it's like these are great feedback opportunities, and we oftentimes are not aware of them in the moment, but listening to it afterwards, you're like, my goodness, wisdom isn't often the issue. It's wisdom and time that is. We don't when you can listen to it after, you realize, "Oh my gosh, I was long-winded."
Yeah.
But I don't notice it in the moment. So,
Man, so that right there, and I do want to come back to the questions on the interview, but that right there, here's just something. If you want to be better at anything that involves you communicating to people, and that's just about everything, right? And so if you whether that is a meeting type that you regularly have, a first meeting, you probably have a pattern, you probably have a way that you're trying to figure out if we're going to fit, or it's answering the question, "Hey, what do you do?" Whatever that is, or if it's an interview, you can get a lot of great and bad, because you're gonna get them both, mock interview questions, and so answer them, but get Loom, record yourself on a Loom answering those questions. And here's what one of the ways we are trying to develop, like, a lot, both us that are already lead advisors, but also those that are probably pretty far away from that just because they don't have the reps with it yet. Record yourself doing it, and then I want you to watch it without any sound. At first, I just want to see what you observe about yourself. And we've got kind of a checklist of things. It's like we do weird stuff with his hands. He looks mad in part of it. Or he looks so monotone, or just, there's all kinds of weird ticks we might have and things like that. That you're just not. You brought it up earlier. You're not self-aware. You're not aware of these things. So you can't fix something or work on something that you're not aware of. And so watch it with no sound. Make your notes.
Yeah.
Go back, watch it, and listen to it, sound only, and listen for all the yeah, uh-huh, all the pause words we use. Listen to your cadence and your pace. Listen to your modulation. Listen to your volume, and and make your observations, and then watch it all together. Make it anything else, and send it to other people who are good at this, who are doing this work. Let them comment. People that do that, man, it is like such a quick feedback loop, and they get instantly better. What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
Well, again, what you're hitting on is that I put a truth out every single week. I'm on LinkedIn. If you guys aren't
Yeah.
connected to me, love to connect with you. I'm under like the 52 Truth is the book I wrote, the 52 Truths, or you look me up under Mike Scovel.
Awesome, and we're gonna link to that too,
Okay.
Mike, in the show notes. And if you hadn't gotten Mike's book or listened to our podcast we did about a portion of it, make sure you do that. We'll link to that one as well.
Well, I would tell you, I've got one. This hits on it right on the spot, right? I said, wisdom. People are seeking out wisdom. What is wisdom? You can't generate wisdom out of thin air. But what I could tell you is what you could do. How do you become more wise? It's about actually practicing and being prepared. Wisdom in time is the key. It's in the moment, not wisdom in general. It's being wise in time. So what does that mean? It means I'm going to go into an interview. I'm going to actually know. I'm going to write down all the questions that could possibly be asked of me, and I'm going to answer those questions. And I might even be prepared for their responses to those answers and where they might go. And all of a sudden, if you were prepared at that level for your next interview, you'd be entering it much more wisely. Okay, you'd be prepared. Those two are connected. So I love that thing about recording yourself, writing down, what's possibly coming at me, and am I comfortable with it? You
Yeah,
also said another thing. You said, how does bad, if there's bad Mike, right? Where I say, hey, I just want you to be aware that went 4 minutes and 32 seconds, right? That
yeah,
response. Has this been brought to your attention before? And it connects to another thing. I ask this question a lot, and you probably won't get it in an interview, but if you could use this word, I would tell you it would gain you some respect, and I think some eye you might raise some eyebrows if you're aware of this word. I've had people ask me, "What is the number one thing you look for in a candidate?" And I think right now the number one thing I look for in a candidate is gratitude. That's my number one thing. If I could tell you what attribute I want them to actually possess, I'll take gratitude over just about anything. And
yeah,
it's ultimately a question we ask of people all the time is just, what are you grateful for? And how quickly they can respond to that, how sincerely they respond to it. I'm surprised how often they struggle with that a little bit. Like it's just kind of a off the cuff, well, oh, my family. But it's not you can tell
yeah,
it's not heartfelt. When I actually help somebody, coach them in an interview process where I say, gosh, do you realize this? Do they respond with, you know what, I appreciate that? I have been told that. All right, I get that. I want to, but whatever. That gives me a sense that there might be some gratitude just innate in them. It's just pouring out of them. And if I can, that's going to go way further than anything else. And I can fix a lot of things, right? I can't fix a person that doesn't have gratitude in life.
yeah.
And so I'm sorry. I'm on that right
No,
now
man,
so
well,
heavy.
the whole our whole beautiful savage idea is beautiful savage is a big ambition and a grateful condition.
Hmm.
Because without that, I mean, you can accomplish a lot with a big ambition. You can get a lot of stuff done, but you want to enjoy the journey, and a lot of the people around you won't enjoy it either. And you are just it's dirty fuel. It's
Yeah.
dirty to only live off that. and not celebrate where you are on your way to where you're going and have that. And man, the more you focus on what am I grateful for, the smaller all the stuff that you're trying to fix just it doesn't weigh as much. It really doesn't. And you're better in everybody's lives around you as a result.
Yeah. Well, if you check, I'll give you one thing to attach to that. If I was going in there to interview today, there's one thing I'm really, really hot on this subject right now, and it's this whole mentality of understanding like, are is your company grateful to have you, and are you grateful to be there? Okay, are those two things connected? Are they grateful to have you as an employee, and are you grateful to be there? Now, if you're going through an interview process, if I was kind of an interviewee, I'd say this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a company that's going to be grateful to have me. They're gonna see my talents. They're gonna see what I can create, and I'm gonna perform at such a level that they're gonna be like, "Yep, best hire we've had." And I'm also gonna look for a company that I'm grateful to work for. So I gotta learn about that company. I gotta be in a space where I'm saying every day I want to come in and give it my best because this is what matters to me. It's it's two-way street,
Yeah.
right? I promise the company I join is gonna be grateful to have me. And I'm also committed to myself to not going anywhere that isn't a company I wouldn't be grateful to work for,
Yeah.
right? And so I just think that connection, that conversation in an interview where you have been pre-thought, this is wisdom, this is pre-thought, this is
Yeah.
what's important to me. If that can come out in that interview process, like because they'll ask you questions like, "What is important to you? What's the most important things?" Or what are you looking for in an ideal career? A great opportunity right there to inject that. I'm looking for a place where, man, they see my talents. They know I'm working my tail off. I'm going to crush it there. They're going to be grateful to have me, and I'm going to be grateful to be there. That's the
Yeah.
place I'm looking for. Anyway,
No, that's awesome. So again, guys, as you're listening to this, if you find yourself whatever seat you're in, you should put yourself in both seats and you should say, how am I showing up? And if I had to go through and answer these questions, how would I do it? Record yourself doing it and then observe yourself. Have somebody else then observe you and give you honest feedback and tell them, my feelings won't get hurt. And if they will, I won't tell you. I promise. Just tell me so I can get better. I really, really want that. It's such an opportunity that most people will not take.
and then in practice with a client, you're literally this is 100% applies. I
Absolutely.
want clients that are grateful for the work I do,
Yeah.
and also understand that they are grateful for the effort and the impact I make. Like they are grateful. I'm grateful to have them as clients, and they're grateful to have me as their advisor. It works when it's two ways. That's what we are working towards here in this relationship.
I
Yeah.
I think that's incredible. Talking about interviews, just sidebar for a second on that. I remember one meeting I was in with another agent friend of ours that had called me and said, "Hey, Wes, will you come do this meeting with me?" And after not won't give you all the backstory, but it was not a great setup for this meeting. Like the guy was said, "Meet you can meet me at the end of day. I'll give you 30 minutes on Thursday, and you'll be. I meet with all my advisors once a year, and I can fit you in as the last one. And so don't bring more than 3 sheets of paper. Bring your best 3 ideas." And so terrible, terrible setup, right? And how he got in there was bad. Anyway, we go in and what I did there when I went in because it's the only way that we're going to make any progress here is I just called the elephant in the room and said, "Hey, so we're not even going to we not even take 15 minutes today. Unless you have questions, then we have more time. We bought 3 really good ideas and that I think you'll find interesting. I think most of all, what today is about is you have everybody in the world reaching out to want to work with you. The last thing you want to be doing right now is meeting with us who you don't really know at the end of a day where you've already met with all these advisors that you have. And really, today's about do you think we're competent and unusual? Do we have good ideas? And do you like us? Like, do you want to keep having these meetings? And we're doing the same thing. And so I think we'll get through these. These are not, I'm going to say, the best ideas. They were the best for the people that we use them for, but I don't know anything about your situation. I just think it's going to be remotely interesting and applicable based on what I can understand about you. So I would just ask that you listen as I go through these with that understanding. And you know what? Guy didn't change his facial expression at all, still looked angry and mean, and we went through the whole thing, but he did end up hiring us afterwards, and his assistant said, "Well, you blew him away." I said, "Golly, I'd hate to see him not blown away. What's he look like then?" It's like, "No, you blew him away." I said, "How?" He said, "Well, you told him the truth without pissing him off." And it is an art, right? It's an art, but, if we'd have pissed him off and got thrown out of the office, we were no worse off than before we came in. So I love the honesty and genuine kind of approach when you're going into any interview like that, Mike.
Yeah.
What else, man? What as you're asking these good interview, bad interview, like which are often the two sides of the coin of the same thing, but what else do you see?
Well, again, I would tell you, there's a lot of this traditional type questioning. I think that, you know, I think you have to be prepared for traditional questioning to be asked. 'Cause I think a lot of interviewers now I'm interviewing for a job. Let's just say I think a lot of them are lazy, and so they just will pick the more standardized questions that you'll see. So it's kind of safe to interview today because you know what's coming. The problem is it's also very, very easy to fall into the standard response that ultimately everybody's giving, right? So how do you go into those things and try to create some uniqueness? Again, this is the opportunity.
Yeah,
The same is true for an advisor, right? They have this. Most clients have the exact same questions. How are you going into that with a unique perspective, a different way of answering those questions that might resonate?
yeah,
And it was a funny one. I had somebody just bring it up to me again last week. It was you've all heard this question. Now, what is your biggest detriment? Like, what's your greatest weakness? Like
yeah.
that's the stupidest question to ask in an interview. But
Care too
hey,
much, Mike.
if, if the guy's lazy enough to ask that question of you, right? And what do you respond with? Because what is your weakness, and what do people say, right? Well, I just work too hard. Everybody just says
Yeah,
that's my
right.
greatest weakness. I'm just too honest. I have too much integrity.
Yeah.
That's my greatest
Yeah.
weakness. It's just
Which they're lying and not very honest if that's the answer
yeah,
they give, by the way.
exactly. It's just like it's a weak space to actually, like I think put an actual attribute. I think if I was asked that question today, and I got to reflect on it, I would say probably, and it probably is true for a lot of us. Optimism can be a real detriment to an advisor, and it's a great weakness and a positive weakness. It's one that, in essence, you could say, oftentimes I'm a little bit too optimistic. I'm a little bit too hopeful. I see things in people and I expect things that I know that what they could achieve, and sometimes I'm let down by that. Or I'm too trusting. Oftentimes I've been let down by that. My optimism, my trust has kind of led me into paths where ultimately I didn't get the outcomes I wanted. Now, would I reduce that? No. I think it might be a weakness I have forever. I might be too trusting forever, and that'll be okay. Because
Yeah,
the wins I get by that trust are worth the heartbreak I get when I'm let down, right? That might be how I answer that question, but my point is like, how do you go into it where it's most of you on here, if you're a good advisor, you're way too optimistic already. Like, yeah,
yeah,
but that's why you're so good, right? You're typically
yeah,
optimistic people are happy people, and happy people are
yeah.
fun to be around. But it also could be a detriment, right? I'm sorry, you gonna say something? I don't want.
Man, no, it's just so good and timely on this thing because so the well, the optimism certainly, but because there's a great book, that I'm not sure how old it is now, not very old, called "That'll Never Work," and it was written by one of the original founders of Netflix, and I just love anything he puts out. It's pretty amazing because in that world, you do have to have crazy optimism about things, and where he goes to it is like, but you also have to have grounded optimism if you're going to make things not fail enough to where something will work and you can stay in business and do things. But certainly, I love the thought of sitting with that question. Like it's a terrible interview question, right? Just awful. You're probably going to get weird responses. But if you were asked that, really spend time. What do you actually think your greatest weakness is? And it's probably tied to one of your biggest strengths. It probably is because it's like they live together in the same house, and you gotta know, be self-aware. Here's what it is, because here's what I am, and here's what that certainly helps me, and I'll talk about that, but this thing, if I'm not real self-aware, it gets in my own way, and I'll tell you, like, if I was answering that question, Mike, I love new. I love new ideas. I love to be able to I think, "Man, that could work, that could work. Look how we can further this thing out." And so I oftentimes, especially younger when I was less self-aware and trying stuff on with our team, I'll have 10 ideas and like, we're going to implement all these and we're going to do it. And it would so blow up the rhythm of our normal and the people running it who are not wired like me, by the way, who they want normal, they want muscle memory. So new is like they resist it and I would get mad and they'd get mad at me. But I was just trying to do too much. And if you try and do too much, the thing that's kind of feeding everybody, that will break. And so, but it's Jen, so what is that? I mean, ask yourself that question. What do you see that could get in your way, and what do you do about it?
Yeah. I love that. I think the concept of them being connected, the negative and connected to something positive is probably a really good
Yeah.
kind of the duality of that issue, right? So I love kind of digging into that and work.
And Michael, in a second, I'm gonna land the plane here in a second, but I want to kind of just one more thing because we'll definitely do a part two of this for sure, because there's just so much in this. But what would you think? And I don't know the answer to this. I'm exploring this with you. If let's say somebody like said back to you, and I know you wouldn't ask that question that way, but somebody, if you did, said back to you and answer that question, they said, well, it's honestly such an awful question because it is. I mean, it's an awful question because nobody wants to like say all the stuff they're bad at for a place they're excited about working. Like nobody wants to say what's the thing that you're going to be just so detrimental for us. But everybody has that. All of us have something that gets in our way, and usually it's connected to something that also really helps us do what we do well. And for me, it would be this. Here's where it gets in my way. And here's where it's really helpful. And I find that the more I have other people with counter strengths and weaknesses around me, the better it goes and the more self-aware I am and they are. What would your thoughts be around a response like that? Or do you have like some other slants you might want to wrap around that?
Yeah. So let me tell you what that just exemplifies. And so I number one, I don't have any experience in answering that question the way it was just done because I never asked the stupid question in front of it, right? Like, what is your grade?
Yeah.
And so I'd be speaking from complete, unexperience and ignorance. But I would tell you this: what you just demonstrated here is probably the biggest thing I'm going to talk about. What you just demonstrated in that response. Now, of course, you probably had to rethink that. You probably had to be prepared for that stupid question to be asked, and you came back really powerfully. What you did was demonstrate confidence. Now, what I would tell you is that the greatest attribute you can bring in an interview with a client, with an interview for a job, is confidence. And how do you express confidence? How do you express it without it becoming cockiness? Okay, I think that that's a very, very good balance. And I think entering it, one, if you have practiced things, you're going to exude confidence anyway. It will be natural. I have no problem even speaking of confidence. I think speaking of your confidence is not a negative if it's done in a thoughtful way. I'll give you a good example. If I was an agent today, right, I would have no problem saying, "I got to just tell you, I'm really good at this. I'm really really good in this space. I'm exceptional in this." I would also tell you it's because I found my ideal. I found my ideal in life, and it was this. I'm really bad at a lot of other things. Like I'm not even allowed to hang a towel rack at my house because it won't be perfectly level. Okay. It's just a foregone conclusion. My wife's gonna have to take it down and reinstall it anyway. So she might as well install the towel rack herself, or we'll hire someone. Okay. It's just not my strength. I'm really bad at a lot of things. But what I did is I found a career path that I was just like, this is my ideal and I love being in it. It's my not only my career, my hobby, it's what I love to do. So I'm just really good. Okay, that's a way of kind of exuding confidence, but making a light of it in the same realm of just kind of talking about everything in life. You're not great at everything, right?
Thanks for tuning in to From Busy to Rich. If something in today's episode sparked an idea or hit a nerve, don't keep it to yourself. Follow the show, share it with a friend, and let's keep building a community of advisors who want more. You can find more resources, tools, and free content at wesyounglive.com. We'll see you back here next time for more real conversations about building the life and business you really want.